Welcome, Retake fam. I'm Lisa Dwan here with Parker and Terrell McKay, ready to bring you all the latest in Rainbow Six Siege. Tell them what we got for them on this episode.
It's everybody's favorite episode today.
Right.
If you live in North America, that is. Because it's going to be NA all day. We're going to be taking a really nice, super-sized look at the North American mini-major, because there's an awful lot that happened. So there's a lot to get into.
That's right, and the first thing at hand, we have to talk about Operation Shadow Legacy. In a 30-minute presentation, Ubisoft gave us all the details, but it was a long presentation. So if you happen to have missed any of it, we break it down in this Explained.
And there's one spotted inside.
Surely he will. Oh, he's on.
Do all the rest of the work. He hears the shot through the barricade.
But he only needs to land a single bullet, and he must know that at this point to get to a close.
Rainbow Six's latest patch, Operation Shadow Legacy, is set to be one of the biggest updates in Siege's history. A new operator, a new secondary gadget, and shiny new sights and scopes are three of the biggest additions coming in Year 5 Season 3. Let's take a look at how these changes could impact your matches this season. First up on the list, the legendary Sam Fisher returns to active duty for Operation Shadow Legacy. The iconic Ubisoft spy sneaks his way out of the Splinter Cell series and right into the hearts of Rainbow Six fans as Zero, and he looks ready to get back to his old ways. His kit revolves around the new Argus launcher and its spying projectiles. When shot into a wall, the Argus cams can see through both sides, and each have a single laser for destroying defender equipment. Alongside this, he also has frag grenades, and when coupled with the Argus, he really has the potential to counter the 20-second meta if used effectively. As well, more cameras will hopefully translate into more intel, and more intel means better comms between you and your teammates, hopefully. Meanwhile, Operation Shadow Legacy gives teams another way of dealing with reinforced walls. Need an extra way of blowing open a hatch or a crouch hole into the site, but you don't really want to bring a second hard breacher? The new breaching charge secondary is exactly what you need, with one small caveat. The new gadget's only available on a handful of operators: Montaigne, Ying, Fuse, Finka, Amaru, Nook, Capitao, and Lion. No doubt the change is to make some of those operators more attractive for attack, but it might hurt some of them in the process. While a hard breaching gadget in the pocket is always useful, certain operators, such as Capitao, will lose vital flash grenades to burn away Jaeger's ADSs and Wamai's magnets. Meanwhile, taking the breaching charge on Montaigne would mean that you lose his ever-important smokes. Lastly, one of the big additions, some new sights and scopes, and they've really set the Rainbow Six world ablaze on the test server. Ubisoft just tossed in a new holo and a new red dot sight alongside a new 1.5 and 2x scopes, while changing up the old ACOG and 3x scope. The devs have also swapped around which weapons have what scopes, so don't be surprised to find something new or even something missing on your favorite gun. To top off the changes, Ubisoft has added colorblind options, color selections, and opacity percents for your optics. And while players are still adapting to the math equations you need to do to find all your new optic sensitivities, maybe go easy on them if you see someone whiff shots with those new scopes. While the new sight might not be as big of a deal as a new operator or gadget, they could impact how players hold angles, tackle sightlines, or switch up meta weapon choices. Plus, making games more accessible for everyone is always a good thing. So, points to Ubisoft for the custom optic colors. We've just scratched the surface of Shadow Legacy, by the way, but you can hop on the test server and see it for yourself.
And there's one spotted inside.
Surely he will. Oh, he's on.
Do all the rest of the work. He hears the shot through the
But he
barricade.
only needs to land a single bullet.
Wow, a lot of new things, but there is one thing that you did not mention. How about the map Chalet? Like, do you like that? You feeling it?
But do you like that I didn't mention it, or do I like the map? I like the map. I like the map quite a lot.
Yeah.
I haven't had a ton of experience with it yet, but I've played it probably about like 5, 6, 7 times somewhere in that window, and it's great. I think it's fun. It's really nice. It feels like a totally different map.
We'll see, because it is still too early to see where we'll be in competitive, and time will tell. There is one thing we have to talk about. So much action went down at the NA Major, and of course we saw a champion emerge, Dark Zero, and I feel like that was kind of a surprise to some people. So Parker, I want to get your thoughts on the entire Major. Did it, first of all, play out the way you expected coming into it?
No, I would have suspected Space Station and TSM in the finals. I think that was a safe bet. Dark Zero kind of limped in through the qualifiers. Oxygen have never really had that coming out performance that we'd expect from them to elevate themselves to a top level, and that puts TSM and SSG as the two remaining teams that have done well, and I thought that either of them were going to take it, and of course they didn't. Dark Zero took it really convincingly.
I want to take us back to that. I think it was in maybe it was the semis against Space Station when Dark Zero played them, and even on what was known as, you know, Space Station's best map, Clubhouse, DZ won. And so I'm wondering, what does this say about Space Station?
I think that Space Station did really well under the last meta. I think that under this current meta with Jaeger and Wamai being so present on defense, it changes the way that Clubhouse is played because you can't run the same style that SSG likes to play, which is they like to roam quite heavily. They have extremely intricate setups on defense. They can still do that, it's just not as powerful as it used to be. And there's always this ebb and flow when it comes to metas, and sometimes teams do well, sometimes teams don't. I think Dark Zero showed up really hungry. I think they played really well around operator bans. And frankly, they were the team that deserved it the most, even though I don't think that deserving is a thing when it comes to winning. I think that they showed up and they proved that they had earned it. And they played the meta better and they outplayed SSG at their own game.
I think we have to also raise the fact that, you know, a lot of people thought Space Station was going to make the finals, so everyone must have prepped the most for Space Station. So in a way, they were already kind of the one to attack, you know, the one to really defeat. And Dark Zero showed up in that first series against them and blew them out of the water. There's another team we must talk about, Team Oxygen Esports. I feel like they were hyped as well. I think they were really hyped coming into this, especially certain players, but they didn't show up the way I think a lot of people expected it. So what do you think of their performance during this major?
OXG is a really interesting case because they were the first team in North America to qualify for the mini major. They lost their next match for first place. They lost their next match after to finish in the top 2. They end up falling to 3rd. They come into the mini major. They're limping in just as DZ was, and then they lose both their matches and their first team out of the major. I mean, you had a pretty bad performance by certain players on certain days. Biologic in particular put up some really miserable stats. And I mean, I understand that people tout his abilities as an IGL and a leader, but you kind of have to perform better on the battlefield. You got to do better in the server. The rest of the team lived and died off of, I felt, Laxing and Foxay as they usually do. Laxing was good, he was consistent. The rest of the team had some off days, and they just didn't look like they were either well prepped enough. It didn't look like their strats were deep enough. There were certain maps where it just looked like they didn't show up at all. And I mean, maybe it's a meta, maybe it's a byproduct of the team chemistry, maybe it's poor stratting. I'm not sure. I'm not in their server. I'm not in their team house. But I mean, you've got the Sonics now in North America proving that they're getting better and better. If OXG wants to stay in the top 4, they're going to have to do better than they've done over the last month and a half.
Definitely agree. I think Oxygen didn't perform the way a lot of people were hoping, and I'm sure they weren't hoping that way either. But there is another team that performed really well. I'm talking about Team Solo Mid. Of course, they made the grand finals, play against Dark Zero. Ultimately didn't win, but I still think they put up fantastic performance. What do you think of them during this major?
I think that Chal is probably still gelling with that team. He comes in, it puts Geo on hard breach, it swaps up some of the roles. Merc had a really terrible major, and he hasn't played really all that well. With the exception of an odd game here or there, since the 6 Invitational, even before then, it's been a really rough ride for him. And with how good he can be, they lose a lot of firepower when he doesn't show up. Bolo is the story for everybody. If TSM wins, he's obviously going to be the MVP. He continues to flourish in his role. I think Geo and Achieve did well too. Chalice showed up big in a couple rounds. But TSM had some issues where they were just getting dominated certain rounds. They were very, pardon the pun from Dark Zero side of things, they were very hot and cold. Some rounds, TSM looked indomitable. And then other rounds, they just fell apart. They couldn't win gun duels. They weren't playing with confidence. They held map control poorly. Their strats didn't look all that deep. There's a lot of questions that I just frankly don't have the answers to, and I'd like to talk to some of the teams at some point to actually be able to dive in and get a good handle on what went wrong.
I wonder, well, with TSM, is it the Bolo show? Like, if he's doing well, they win.
Team Bolo Mid.
I don't know how that branding is going to work. TBN? Yeah.
They'll deal with it.
Let's not take that one. So we got to talk, of course, about the finals. I think a lot of people were disappointed because it was like a 3-0. Of course, DZ got 1 map advantage, so
a very
kind of
quick
2-0.
match.
It was a very quick series.
Quick
Did you expect for it to be such a stomp?
No, I didn't. I mean, DZ looked so good going into the finals that when the finals were announced and they already had a 1 map advantage, I assumed that Dark Zero was going to be the odds-on favorite, especially given the way that they matched up against TSM previously, right? And TSM had shown more weaknesses than DZ through their run through the major. I thought DZ going in probably would have won, but I expected a 3-1, maybe a 3-2. Certainly did not expect a 3-0 and a quick 3-0. It was only 2 maps played, and neither map was really that close. Map 1 was decently close. Map 2 was a total and utter blowout. At that point, I think TSM just fell apart and they couldn't recover.
All right, so obviously congrats to DZ, fantastic performance. I want to know, what do you think was the biggest takeaway from this major? What has changed about, Pro League and NA? What's the new, is there a new dominant team? Are they the new best team? Like, what can we take away from this?
The biggest takeaway for me is how competitive North America is. For a long period of time, NA looked like they were playing second fiddle to EU. There were periods of time where LATAM looked like a better region than NA. Now NA, I think, has pretty firmly cemented itself as the best region in Rainbow Six. And the top 4 are so close. All of them are so close. And with the Sonics nipping at the heels of them as well, you could even argue that the top 5 in NA right now are very, very strong. And the storyline moving forward, as we look at the next stage coming up, is DZ going to continue to do well? Will Oxygen rebound? Will Space Station find their footing? Will TSM be able to gel with their full roster? Will the Sonics make a play for the top 4? There's an awful lot to look at.
Find out in stage 2. Hope everyone enjoyed the North American Major, because we've got our favorite plays ready for you. Hot and Cold played his heart out at the Major to get his team their first championship. Up against TSM on Cafe, HNC turned up the heat in the kitchen.
Hit the site, and they haven't really accomplished as much as I think they'd hoped they had. They at least got the roamer. That will be big. They don't need to worry as much about the holes above. That'll allow them, I think, a little bit easier access to this tiny hole that was made by Geo.
Hot and Cold is itching for a fight through that opening that you'd mentioned, and while he's going to need to just hold off the troops from TSM, he'll be aided by one of those toxic canisters being deployed by Skies. He's got 2 left in 20 seconds. That means that you'll be able to blanket the remaining timer. Just narrowly evading the frag grenade is the Hot and Cold once again on his belly. We talked about how important he was going to be, and he's the first line of defense. But right now, TSM just bursts on in. They get so many kills, but pistol out, Hot and Cold is gonna clutch. What a huge play from Hot and Cold. And he's not the first line of defense, he's the last, Michael. What a showing from him.
While SSG's run at the Major was short, Bosco made good use of his time. Facing elimination, the Bosco just starts gunning to keep SSG alive against TSM.
They're trying to flush out Geo. This could work pretty well, actually. This is the primary focus for them right now, but the problem is Bola's holding another angle. If they get too aggressive on that window, we could see an immediate trade, but that doesn't happen. Geo is going to get burnt out primarily by the incendiary bolts, so that's going to take him down. Leave us in a 4v4. Good trade from SSG, very tactical trade too. Maybe this is a little bit trickier than I first thought. It was looking like they were just going to push straight in, but they're actually building something a little bit more complex than that. Micro Smoke's now ready to be deployed. Merc, though, is going to be able to find another trade. He's able to eliminate Ramby, but Bosco's right back onto that. Here comes the hop down from Merc, who holds position, but Bosco picking up kills left and right. Everything falls to Merc, now in a 1v2 situation. If he swings this hallway, he's immediately got a player on him, and that's Bosco to finish things off. SSG, once again, refused to go down without a fight.
This next highlight is shout out to everyone on Space Station Gaming for pulling this one off. SSG takes the 20-second meta literally as they go for a 5v5 fight at the final second.
In the wrong spot over top arcade, they could be a dead man. And the players on TSM could find themselves in a good position. They're going to be in a good position regardless, though. We're out of 20 seconds, and nothing's happened yet.
And this is that patience from TSM shining through once again. Chala's going to take a little bit of damage, but he's got Merc in tandem with him. Anyone that hops that window is surely dead. Bolts with the first kill at 10 seconds remaining. It's a harsh execute here for SSG. Canadian rotating to the bathroom. He catches Chiefs off guard. He needs to sprint in and get this kit down, though. 0-0. Does he have the time? He does! Oh my god, SSG! Wow. What is that? Such an impressive offensive round as they hightail it into sight and remove every single speck of TSM from Theme Park.
This next clutch is all about right place, right timing, and a little bad luck for TSM. Thrown in a 1v3 against Bolo, Chala, and Merc, Hyper gets the perfect chance to tie things up.
Quickly. Eclipse under the radar on White stairs.
He's able to take out Geo, but not get back to the bomb site. TSM trading admirably so far, leaving Hyper in a final situation now between, what is it, 3 members? Make that 2 as Merc dies. Chala and Bolo against Hyper. Hyper sees 1. The second drops. What a clutch from Hyper. In pillars, he spent the entire part of the round in that exact location, and it pays off. Dark Zero stealing around, and they tie up the map 4-4.
Luckily for Vertical and Oxygen Esports, the 20-second meta backfired on SSG in this clip. Pinned down by SSG with time ticking away, Vert makes some breathing room for Oxygen.
Even greater advantage now for SSG, and still lots of Skeleton Key for thinking they need to be able to carve up that ceiling above him and make it really tough for OXG to hang on. In a very common default spot, Vertical is going to play very, I would say, unpredictably. He's waiting for the sledge to walk on in, but he misses one shot, turns, picks them both up, but he's in a one-man stand. Pistol out, 3 kills, and the timer strikes 0. What a clutch from Vertical. Nobody from Space Station could see him. Impressive stuff. Now Oxygen will take their very first round.
We saved one of the best clips for last, from Mr. Bolo himself. Looking to close things out against SSG and secure a final spot, Bolo did just what superstars do.
It seems that TSM's the first to the punch, but Canadian firing back immediately. We're on equal footing walking into the last minute here, which could possibly be our last round unless SSG has something to say about it. They're trying to clear out the lobby area now, but remember, the site is double bar. Bolo with a huge kill here onto Bosco. That's going to remove the Capital.
Bolo, remember, is still over towards the front, fending off any pushes from that direction.
Full smoke grenades now for Chala, and he's so good on time. Only 10 seconds remaining. They each take 10 seconds off. Canadian still outside, though, as he now has blue bar control, but he could get fragged out if Bolo swings at the proper time, but he's playing patiently. They need to get the diffuser kit down. They're all hopping inside. This could be it. Fultz with a big kill. It's all down to Bolo, the man, the myth, the legend. Can he possibly do it? He has the hot mark. Bolo, you have to be able to get the last kill. Can he do it? He does! Bolo with the ace in the very last round.
That's it for this week's 6-pack. While the major season is over, there's always more R6 action to come.
Dark Zero beat the odds in the North American Major to take their first championship ever. But how did the team that almost didn't make it to the Major at all go from 4th to 1st in America? Let's crunch the numbers behind Dark Zero's exciting championship run. Much like TSM and Bolo, DZ caught flack for being the Hyper show. It wasn't a completely fair criticism, but Hyper's stats were, well, bonkers. He opened up with a 1.72 rating in their first series against the Sonics and only had 1 game under a 1.3 rating all stage. Averaging a kill per round with a whopping +30 on kills and deaths made him one of America's top players and by far DZ's best. While Mint and Skies held their own, Eclipse and Hot and Cold lagged behind in stage 1. Hot and Cold struggled the most of all the DZ players, in fact. While he had an impressive 11 plants to his name, Houghton hit a 0.64 KD ratio and a 0.84 rating, while also having just below a 0.5 KPR. Dark Zero bounced back in the major qualifiers. They padded out their stats against Mirage, but had to lean on Hyper and Skies against the Sonics. Skies showed that Hyper wasn't the only fragger on the team, sitting only 0.02 behind Hyper in the ratings and 2 kills behind Hyper for KD. Meanwhile, Hot and Cold and Eclipse stepped up their game, with only Mint lagging behind on the stat sheet in the qualifiers. However, 2 games Dark Zero were expected to win wasn't necessarily the best gauge of where the team sat heading into the major. DZ opened up the weekend against the #1 seed Space Station as the heavy underdogs. Yet, despite this, Dark Zero stunned the reigning world champs in an exciting 3-map series, pushing past a Bosco hard carry on SSG's side. Houghton took the reins in the opener, snagging a 1.19 rating and a very impressive 100% cost in the final map. Heading against TSM next, fans were licking their lips to see a Hyper and Bolo slugfest. Yet, neither superstar really showed up at all, and neither of them ended up fragging out in the semis, period. On DZ's side, 2 people stood out. First being Eclipse. He had a monster performance with a 1.49 rating and a +13 KD. The second was Hot and Cold, who was all hot, no cold, again with a 6-0 entry line and a 1.36 rating. After that, TSM and Dark Zero would square off yet again in a lopsided end to the August Major.
The rematch once again breaking in Dark Zero's favor. Mint and Hyper came alive in the finals, each hitting over a 1.3 rating, with Mint pulling off a 1.05 KPR. For DZ, it was only Skies who had a rough finals, with the rest of his team hitting over 1.15 ratings to claim their first trophy ever. In the major, Hyper performed well, but he wasn't their highest rated player once all major, despite doing so for 3 out of their 4 Stage 1 matches. Dark Zero finally managed to break free and win a title after running in circles for so long. If the entire squad can perform like this in Stage 2, expect to see them at the November Major.
It's a job.
I love it. It's like more time spent with you on camera.
That is not something you
It's
enjoy.
just like, I'm gonna mess up on purpose.
It's not something she
I'm gonna
enjoys.
mess up on purpose just so I can
Like-
do this 20 more times with you.
Would like that on the record?
We're not rolling, are we? Yeah. Damn it! Before we go, of course, we must do some Six posting. This is where we discuss and show off the things that the community have been discussing and showing off. So the first thing we got is actually from a face or voice you guys may recognize. I'm talking about caster Geo. So she's actually very talented in the arts.
She's a pretty decent artist.
A very decent artist, and you're
Very
just saying that
decent.
because she makes it look really good. So let's show everyone what she drew. Here we got like a cover, anime style, comic style.
It's like a poster.
It is like a poster.
It's like a fight, almost like a fight night poster. Different style.
Yeah.
Anime style. You know my thoughts on anime.
Guys, okay, just bring it back. Okay.
I hate it.
I'll show the world what happens when you cross me.
She made you like a redhead.
She made me
ginger.
very red.
You were like ventriloquist doll red.
Okay, I wouldn't go that far.
Which really confused me, because if you look here, he kind of looks like brown hair, doesn't it? Right?
Auburn.
I love that piece.
Great work.
Great work.
Thank you.
We got one more thing to talk about, and it's more of a serious topic.
Okay.
So right after the NA Major, Nyx actually announced that he was let go, released, dropped.
Next.
And he even said in his tweet longer that the guys felt that they would be a stronger team without him, and that his personality was kind of hard to mesh with. So I guess the question for you is, where do you see him going? What would you like to see him do in the upcoming weeks before, you know, the rest of the Pro League?
I mean, I don't see him going anywhere if he doesn't fix his attitude.
Right.
You're not getting dropped for personality issues for being too nice. So clearly there's an issue with leadership there. We'd heard rumblings of a dust up that Yardy / Drip had with Nyx ages ago before NJR came into this roster. And, you know, Nyx's tenure on DG is kind of sad because it all started off with that skin fiasco with the multiple rehosts and I think DG as a team has overperformed expectations. Nyx in particular in his role in the server I think has been fine.
Yeah.
Out of the server, obviously according to his teammates, not super great.
So it is more than just skills in-game.
Trying to be really diplomatic.
I could tell. I could
Trying
tell.
to be really
And I
nice
actually
about
find it really funny that you're the one lecturing about positive attitudes over here, because if you guys don't know, this
I was drawn
guy
as
is
an
a diva.
angel.
Where's that piece of paper I had in my hand yesterday morning?
Damn it, Gio, you effed this up. Okay. All right, guys, this is the end of this episode. Be sure to follow us on all of our socials at WatchRetake, and we'll see you next week with this angel.